good.
Hey, Jack. Morning, Jack. Morning, Chief. Any idea how that guy stepped off from the...
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Health and Human Services Parks and Recreation Committee. Roll call.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Christians?
Here.
Ms. Mariette?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here. Approval of the minutes of September 8.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes of September 8 as published.
Support Walker.
It's been moved and supported. Christensen, Walker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Would there be any changes to the agenda? Any changes to this morning's agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve this agenda.
I'll make the motion, Morse.
Support Christians.
Moved by Morris, support by Christians. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Any public comment at this time? Would there be any public comment? Hearing none. Mr. Brian Mackey, and he is a senior restoration ecologist with the GEI Consultants, and Mr. McKean of our Parks and Recreation.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Gary McKean. I first want to say thank you for the opportunity to bring forward a project that we've been working on since last March, actually. And this is a culmination, or beginning to come to a culmination, I should say, of many different things. Funding through NOAA, as you know about, and several other agencies. Starting to work with the West Michigan Regional Shoreline Development Commission on a project like this, and bringing Conservation Resource Alliance in together. I didn't realize at the time was going to be so difficult, but it's really worked out really swimmingly well. So we're really pleased to be able to go forward. Brian won the beauty contest, or his company did, of 5 different engineering firms that bid on this job. Not necessarily GEI wasn't the low bidder, but GEI followed the RFQ, what was proposed by the West Michigan Regional Shoreline Development Commission about what needed to be done going forward with our partner NOAA at the time. Brian's been instrumental working with us. Every other Tuesday we're together on a Zoom call or in person down at at Marshville Dam. And he's led us through a lot of different things that we're looking at. We're very close to getting to final engineering. And Brian, I wanted Brian to come in and talk with you today about that. But Brian is really an interesting fellow, to say the least. Brian is a professional restoration ecologist with more than 20 years of experience throughout the eastern United States in the design and construction of stream and wetland and soft shoreline engineering, native planting and invasive species management projects. Brian's responsible for the project management of ecological restoration design and implementation projects for GEI. Brian also actively teaches workshops and gives presentations on various ecological restoration-oriented topics throughout the country. Brian has a Bachelor of Science degree in Natural Resources and Environmental Science from Purdue University. His professional registration, he's a CERP, which I did not know before, but he's actually a Certified Ecological Restoration Practitioner. Brian resides in Grand Haven, Michigan, and he currently is a senior professional for GEI Consulting since 2014. Prior to that, he was with JF New. JF New is probably one of the top restoration companies in the Midwest by any means. He was there for 14 years. But I would like you to welcome Brian. He's going to talk a little bit about what the project is, where we're at and where we're going, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys this morning. So I understand that some of you were at the public information session that we held back in May. Some of you may not have been. So what I'd like to do is just kind of give an overview of the project, talk about some of the details that we're working through. I don't have a lot of data specifically in this presentation, but I would be glad to talk data all day long if any of you are interested in that kind of thing. Looks like the clicker.
Click toward the computer. Okay, come on.
I might just have to ask you to just.
Do you have to
hold
turn
this.
that on? There we go.
It's always the easy things, right? The batteries and turn on the on switch. So as Gary mentioned, we've really been fortunate to work with a wide variety of partners, including Gary and John Wines from Oceana County on this project. What some of you may not realize is that that Stony Creek's considered one of the highest quality trout streams in all of Lower Michigan. And early on in the project, we met with the state of Michigan regulatory folks from Eagle out of Grand Rapids, and they actually indicated that this is going to be the largest project of this type that they have permitted under the Grand Rapids district. So this project, although the park itself might seem a little bit small, it's actually very big regionally and even statewide. And because of that, the project's taken a lot of partners to put it together. Oceana County, obviously we're here talking to you this morning. West Michigan, our Shoreline Regional Development Commission, Conservation Resource Alliance, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources is a partner in the project, Grand Valley State University, and then our firm is fortunate enough to be able to work with all these great individuals on this project. So as we look at the project, there's really three main parts of the project that are kind of all coming together. One is the replacement of the existing culverts with a clear span bridge on Marshville Dam Road where it crosses Stony Creek. The second part is removal of the existing dam, which is in a bit of a dilapidated state and has been for quite some time now. And then finally, the restoration of about 2,500 feet of Stony Creek upstream from the dam. And I'll show you some pictures of what some of that looks like in just a minute here. In addition to all of those components, what we want to try to do is increase public access to the creek as a part of this overall project as we look at really reworking the park a bit. An interesting wrinkle to the project, as Gary alluded to, is the funding is actually split between Wimserdick and the Conservation Resource Alliance. So there's actually multiple different grants through two different partners that have come together to make this project happen, which from an administrative project standpoint is a bit challenging. I think everybody was maybe a little bit concerned when we came to actually working through the project how much of that would carry through, because everybody has their own pot of money that they have to make sure is spent the way it should be. But in practice, it's been absolutely great to work for and really work through, because everybody's been on the same page. And I think that's been an important part of the project is all of the different partners, even though they have different backgrounds and interests, they all have the same goals in this project. And that's really to try to restore Stony Creek and enhance the public use of the space. So with all of that said, we have funding in place for the dam removal and culvert replacement right now. Funding is currently being sought for the upstream creek restoration and the public access portions of the project. But because of the unique nature of this project, with Stony Creek being such a high quality trout stream, and the potential size and scale of it, all of the partners are fairly confident that funding is going to come into place. It's just a matter of time. In fact, at this point, we were kind of joking, we might wind up getting maybe a few too many grants, because right now Conservation Resources Alliance is applying for multiple grants, and in the back of their mind they're wondering, well, what happens if they get all of them? But that would be a good problem to have.
Can I just real quick, how do you determine the quality of a trout stream without getting too deep?
So the state of Michigan actually goes through and they sample fish in the creeks. And they compare the fish that they find in Stony Creek versus the fish that they find in other creeks regionally and throughout the state. And based on that, based on the species that they find, the sizes of the fish that they find, total population sizes and things like that, that's how they determine the quality. Okay. And what they found is that Stony Creek has an awful lot of really good fish in it compared to other streams in the area.
Nice.
So if we look at the project as a whole here, you can see downstream, you can see where Marshville Dam County Park is and where the dam is and where the stream crosses the road. If you look at that light tan area going upstream from the creek, that's the area that would have historically been impacted from the construction of the dam. when the dam was built. So all of that would have been underwater at one point. Back in 1970, some vandals bypassed the dam, and the dam's been in kind of a state of disrepair ever since. So what happened is this all would have been forested at one point. When the dam was built, it flooded a lot of the area out, a lot of the trees died. Then when the dam came out or was bypassed, that area drained, and now what we have out there is really a lot of invasive species. Not a lot of trees have come back. So what we're looking to do with the project is to not only remove the dam and replace the culvert, but to try to restore that stretch of creek upstream that was historically impacted from that dam being in place. And I'll actually show a couple of pictures in a minute here showing what the stream looks like and then what it could potentially look like. So just a few pictures, understanding some of you have probably been out there maybe even fishing yourselves, but also maybe some of you have not crawled down in the creek itself. These are a couple of pictures of the culvert crossing. There's actually 3 culverts right now that run underneath Marshville Dam Road. Those culverts concentrate the flow of the creek, and there's also a bit of a drop on the downstream side from where those culverts go from upstream to downstream from the dam. A lot of the larger fish, the larger trout, they can make it up and through that okay, because trout are such strong swimmers, they can basically get up and walk around the road if they really want to. But the smaller fish can't. So those, and you know, the larger fish rely on those smaller fish for food, right? So we want to try to restore the stream in a holistic way that makes the whole ecosystem function much better. So a part of the project is going to be replacing those culverts with a clear span bridge. Here's what the dam currently looks like, in case you guys haven't crawled out on both sides of it. The view on the left is upstream looking downstream, and the view on the right is taken from Marshville Dam Road. There's actually 2 different parts to the dam. There's a historic spillway, and then what you see on the left there is where there historically would have been weir boards that could have been used to control the level of the impoundment. Right now it's all kind of in a state of disrepair. The concrete's crumbling a little bit. It's backing up. There's about a 3-foot high difference upstream and downstream from the dam. So historically it would have been 6 to 8 feet or so, but in the state that it's in right now, there's about a 3-foot difference from upstream and downstream. And then as you go upstream and look at Stony Creek, what you see is as a result of that dam holding water back, it slows the flow of the creek. And what that does is it causes a lot of sediment to drop out, and it also makes the creek wider really than it should be. So when you start to think about fish habitat and trout habitat, you want a lot of diversity in your bottom. You want riffles and pools. You want deep pools where the fish can hang out. But then you also want what we may call riffles, which are going to be shallower areas with a little bit of wood and a little bit of rock where insects are going to attach to. And those insects become food for the small fish, which then become food for the big fish. Well, what we have, not in all places, but in a lot of places upstream as a result of the dam, is the creek is over wide, it's very shallow, and there's just a lot of just sand that's deposited out. We also don't have a lot of wood, and wood is one of the best habitat elements that we can have when it comes to fish habitat. So this is what a lot of that creek looks like upstream in its current state. And then this is what the park currently looks like. So there's a few parking spots. There's gravel parking. There's a couple of picnic tables and a fire ring there. Access to get down to the creek right now is pretty difficult. For any and for some of you chuckling, that might be an understatement to say it's pretty difficult. It's a bit of a scramble, and on a rainy day you might be able to get down, but you're probably not getting back up again because you kind of slide down. If you look on the left there, you kind of slide down an embankment to get down to the creek, kind of through a little footpath. So it's a great place to be. It's a great space. we've seen a lot of people from the public spending time out there. But it's hard to get down to the creek unless you're an especially agile angler. So I'm going to talk through now just a few different components, so some of the things that we're talking, or that we're building into the design of the creek itself. And the first one is replacing those 3 culverts with a clear span timber bridge. So we've been working with Mark Timmer and the Road Commission and his engineer on this aspect of the project. And what you see is, even though we call these different aspects of the project, they all really need to work together. So there's these different funding pots and different partners, but we're really viewing the project as one, because the fish don't care about where the money's coming from, right? They just want to be able to go from point A to point B and have the right habitat. So the picture on the bottom left there is a similar bridge to what's being designed by the Road Commission. Basically removing those culverts, and then through that process we would have one clear span bridge, timber bridge, and then we would have a continuous stream bottom going from downstream of that area all the way upstream. So where you see in the top left there that kind of drop coming from just downstream of the culverts, all of that will go away, and we would have one steady elevation going from downstream to upstream. Second part is the dam removal. The dam itself is currently acting as a barrier to fish passage. It's also, depending on who you talk to, a bit unsightly right now, just because it hasn't really been repaired in a long time. So there's about a 3-foot high drop across that dam, which does inhibit the fish passage. The dam can also be a bit of a safety hazard for anybody that might want to crawl out there. So here's kind of an aerial version of that. You can see the viewing area down to the bottom there, and just kind of the state of the overall dam. Then we have the upstream creek restoration. So much of the creek upstream is over-widened and shallow, and there's a lack of wood. So to go back to your question earlier about how do we know what's high quality and not, well, the same question applies here. How do we know that this creek is over-widened? How do we know that there's a lack of wood? Well, what we do is we go into a higher quality reach of the stream, and we actually measure all of these different parameters. So there are metrics that we use. We actually count and measure wood, and there's a nationally approved scoring system for actually classifying wood in a creek. So what we actually did is we found a stretch. We looked multiple different stretches, and we found a really good one just downstream from Marshville Dam Road, and that's what you see in the bottom right there. So we go down there and we measure the stream. We look at the bed slope of the stream, the channel dimensions of the stream, and then we actually count the wood and score the wood in the stream itself. And when we're down there, we're down there doing this work, there's our steelhead swimming around beneath our legs. So we know from the biological aspect as well as the physical aspect that this is a fishy stretch of creek. This is what we want the upstream reach to look like. So we take a look at what we have. We take a look at what we want it to be, and then we develop a plan to make that picture in the upper left look like the picture in the lower right, and we call that a reference reach. So I'll show a few pictures here, kind of comparing side by side. So if we look at this in that reference reach, you see a lot of wood. We see a deeper hole there on the right. Then whereas when we look upstream, we see a much wider creek that's basically just flat and sandy. Couple of other pictures. We wouldn't propose to actually put in wood across the stream itself because we want to make sure that we're not putting in blockages. But what you see along with that wood is it creates shading, it creates scour holes. That wood actually creates the habitat that we want to have. So we would actually we're working on now designing in very specifically that wood into the creek itself. And here's some other aspects just showing that wood and how it might be configured. So what we do is we look at things from a biological lens, and then we also look at things from an engineering lens. So we can use engineering models to calculate these modifications that we're proposing to make to the creek, to make sure that this creek will still perform from a flow and from a function standpoint how we want it to. So because we don't want to create flooding, we don't want to increase stream velocity so much that small fish can't pass, but at the same time we want to try to add all these different habitat elements that we can do. And that's actually what we're doing right now, is we're working through that process of designing in all of those different details to make sure that when the project's done, at least from an engineering standpoint, we've accomplished the goals that we want to accomplish. A few other pictures here. Here you can see a big log in the creek upstream, and really what that log is doing is, you know, for those of you that might be fishermen, those logs create those big deep scour holes. When we go downstream of Marshfield Dam Road, we're finding, and maybe I shouldn't say this because it's private property, we were finding holes that were 6 to 8 feet deep, and those holes are holding trout. So it's private property, so you guys probably don't want me mentioning that too much, but there's some great fish habitat downstream, and that's what we're trying to mimic with this project. So I'm gonna just to kind of wrap up and then give us a little bit of time for some questions. One of the last elements that we're really working on is addressing that public access component. Understanding that right now it is difficult for the public to get access down to the creek. So we're working on a couple of different concepts to actually make it ADA accessible path in order to get down to the creek and have one or multiple viewing platforms down by the creek. So one of the challenges that we have is that right now that parking lot is so much higher than the creek. So we're exploring, and in order for things to be ADA accessible, we need to have a very gentle slope. So we're looking at ways that we might be able to create some kind of a meandering path to take advantage of the natural contours out there to actually bring a path or a boardwalk down to the creek, which would then get people down close to the bank for both fishing and for viewing. So here's a couple of different ideas that we're kind of playing with. In meeting with Eagle, they have restrictions on how big any one platform can be because we're going to be right down in the floodplain itself. So we can't affect river flows and fill and things like that. We don't want to affect the function of the creek itself, but we do want to get people down to the creek. So what Eagle advised is that we could have multiple smaller decks instead of one larger one. So that's what we're working with a little bit here, is this idea that you might have a gentle slope path getting down to the creek, and then a boardwalk along the creek, along with a couple of different viewing platforms where people could fish from. And what you see, for those of you that are fishermen, one of these platforms could be right around these nice outside bends where where typically deeper holes form in creeks, which then become great places to catch fish. So these are kind of renderings of what this creek might look like after the dam has been out and the work is done. These are conceptual right now. These are some of the things that we're working through with Gary and the other project partners in order to develop and refine these concepts in ways that will meet all the public needs as well as the habitat needs that we're trying to accomplish with the project.
Brian, did your pusher stop working?
It's hit and miss.
You won't be pointing at the computer right there, the laptop.
There we go. And this is just kind of ending. This is a rendering. If you were to stand here right now, you'd be looking at the dam. So this is a rendering from upstream to downstream of what it could potentially look like as we add some of that wood into the creek, we remove the dam. And then it's a little bit tough to tell, but there in the upper right you can see a person standing on a platform that might be viewing the creek or even fishing from there. So trying to help give a little bit of a visualization of what it could look like, understanding that sometimes it's hard a little bit to grasp what it looks like now compared to what it could be. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap things up, but certainly I would be glad to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Brian, if you could explain about the scoring of the stream. We talked about this a little bit in our Tuesday meetings, but
Yep.
It's really interesting, I think, for the board to understand how streams are scored.
Sure.
And this stream right now does not score. It doesn't even meet the level of scoring.
Sure. So there's a tool that's relatively new in the state of Michigan, and as far as any of us know, it hasn't been applied in this way yet. So we're trying something a little bit different here. It's called the Michigan Stream Quantification Tool, and the Stream Quantification Tool uses these scoring metrics to basically come up with buckets of categories for your stream. And they would go from non-functioning, and this is from Ecological's perspective, non-functioning to functioning at risk to functioning. Well, a lot of our streams in Michigan are functioning at risk or not functioning. So one of the things that we look at is one of the indices is what's called the Large Woody Debris Index. And that's that scoring methodology that I talked about earlier, where we go out and we're literally counting and measuring wood, and we're adding up the score. And in Michigan, to hit a score of functioning at risk, you need to have a score of 600 for a given reach. We measured downstream in those areas that I was looking at, and we were hitting scores around 650. Upstream of Stony Creek, our scores are around 150. So from a wood habitat standpoint, which is a major factor in streams, we're only at about 25% of what's functioning right now. So, but what we want to do is not only compare things to statewide standards, but also compare them to our reference reach, right? Because we want to be very local and specific to Stony Creek and what's actually happening in Stony Creek, which happens to align with that same statewide goal of functioning at risk. So our goal is going to be to hit a minimum of a score of 600. So what we're actually designing right now, which we've never done before, and we've never gotten this precise, and none of the other project partners have either, be it the DNR or Conservation Resource Alliance or everybody else, is we're developing individual pieces of wood and scoring them so that when we put them back into the creek, we'll be able to hit that index score that we want to hit. And at the same time, we're looking at how those literally individual pieces of wood will affect the functionality of the creek, because you put a log in a creek in a certain way and it's going to change the flow. So we're looking at things both biologically and from an engineering standpoint to try to make sure that we're hitting both of those goals.
Go ahead.
Go, sir.
Okay. The roadway that goes between and where the new bridge will be built, I had concerns when I was out there that the traffic comes through there at a pretty good clip. Have you had discussions with the road commission as to what they can do to slow that road down?
We have been talking about that. I don't think we can say anything definitive right now, because I would sort of have to defer that to Mark Timmer with any specific comments.
Two things I could add. One would be that they plan on clearing the approaches as much as the road right-of-way will be. There's a lot of dense vegetation on either side, which limits and blocks going in and out of the park. So the plan is to basically cut that back in such a way and maintain it going forward, so the visibility will be much increased. We looked at, not part of Brian, but Scott Engineering, which is a bridge engineer and the road engineer for the road commission. Robert's been part of our program as well, and he's looked very significantly at possibly altering the road from where it is. We got into a lot of discussion, and it became almost a safety issue by changing the roadway from where it lays right now will actually cause potentially more problems going forward. So two things will happen. Number one, it'll be cut back, the vegetation will be cut back significantly, and number two, there will be some speed signs that will be introduced once the project is to that point.
Okay. On the side that is opposite of where the dam is, so I guess that would be the south side.
South side.
Thank you. Are they planning to do more with like that old existing, was that a road or a bridge that was there?
Yeah.
That's actually the old bridge across the creek, and that will be coming out as part of the project.
Comes out.
Yep.
And with the culvert removal, there are more culverts further upstream, like Piper Creek. Have you guys gone further up to see where culverts might be an issue as these three are, or did our study just leave us within the Marshville Pond compound?
So right now, this is focused on this part of the project. I can't say for certain. Gary, maybe you might know.
I was
if
with
others were
Scott
interested.
Engineering with Robert and Mark Timmer, and we went up to what quote unquote was called the Iron Bridge, which is Baker Road, and that is a similar type of arch bridge, which is that Ron was just talking about, Mr. Christian, sorry. That basically was put in about the same time, 1910, 1906, something like that. But that's as far north as they've gone to that point. of course, Stony Creek, as we know, starts kind of in the Shelby Road area. Actually, the watershed area is much broader than that, but that's where it starts to really form. The Road Commission did quite a significant upgrade to the bridge at Shelby Road 4 years ago. So that's really the beginning, the headwaters, if you will, and then, as you mentioned, Mr. Erickson, many other creeks and flowages go into it to form the creek. So they have been looking at that. One of the good things for the county is that the Oceana Conservation District was just donated 40 acres to 2 parcels north of where our park is, and that will become the Stony Creek Nature Preserve in the next year or so, hopefully. That's on Baker Road. That was a gift from the Hunter Headland Morris family, and that basically straddles the creek on either side, and it's going to be another great place for fishing for the public to intercede into the water at that point. And that has a score up there of about 1,200 because there's a lot of woody debris up there.
Yeah, Piper is just beautiful up through Cobbtown and then all the way into Shelby. That's been a tremendous trout stream for years with numerous fish.
Now, the fire chief for that district is in the audience today, and I'm wondering if we've had discussions in the planning of where they might use that as a source of water in filling up their trucks, tankers.
I got 35 years on the Shelby Fire Department. We've never used it as a water source.
It's too shallow.
It's just too shallow.
Too shallow, too inaccessible.
Yeah.
My bigger concern is what's the load limit going to be on the bridge?
That will be, Robert from Scott Engineering has assured us that it will be similar to what it is now.
Okay,
So the weight won't change. It might be increased a little bit.
Okay, because we've got some tankers that will go across that are pushing 50,000 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important to make sure that it's done right and correctly, and the Road Commission is an integral part of this. The Road Commission is actually into the building of the bridge and the regrading and so on. They're doing a lot of work themselves, and they're actually going to be one of the payees, if you will, of the NOAA grant. It's about $750,000, I think, is their portion of the work that they'll get paid for. So trying to keep projects like this within the county, I think, is important to go forward. And next step will be eventually going out for bidding, contractor-wise, and so on. And we'll have to see how that lays out. So.
Yes, Mr. Morris.
How many acres do we own there?
The park itself is 18 acres, roughly. We own on both sides of the creek and both sides of the road.
So that's what I'm wondering, how far up creek will people be able to fish and go?
Well, riparian rights allows the people to walk in the creek as far as they want. So when they get out of the water and they go on private property is the issue. So they can enter the water at the park and walk forward or south, however, north or south. Long story short, we own probably 1,000 feet to the north, but don't hold me to that, somewhere around there. The good thing is John Wines, who's also on our park board, his family owns the property around the park. So he's been a willing participant and quite an historian for the archaeological part of the whole GEI system.
Brief little story, I tried kayaking with a couple friends as an adventure downstream. We didn't get very far, I'll tell you that.
Too much wood?
Too much
wood.
Yeah, wood across, yeah. We had to, yeah. So I know that area kind of pretty well.
There's some places where it gets pretty narrow and the creek speed moves up.
Yeah.
Picks up quite a bit too.
And deep, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I couldn't touch at certain places when I got out.
There's some deep holes we were trying to measure that we couldn't get into to get to the bottom of them. It just wasn't safe. So. You just know there's fish sitting in the bottom there too.
Well, I wanted Brian to come in and basically tell the board, you know, the science that we're looking at and the science and the engineering and the data that is being done on a very conservative basis. We're being very careful to ecologically treat the site as it is respected by so many people in the county and everybody else. But having a professional like Brian and the crew that we have, the staff with the CRA people, and it's interesting to hear streamologists, they batter back and forth, well, you need to look at this data, and you need to look at that data, and my eyes are somewhere back in the top of my head. But I appreciate Brian coming here today, and
We will be having a general purpose meeting at Venona Township Hall a week from today at 6 o'clock. It will basically be going deeper into, I hate to say the weeds, but into the stream. That'll give you more data. And I did tell Brian that they like pictures, so Ron, I hope this satisfied your need for pictures.
Very much, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for the time, I really appreciate it.
Brian.
Thank you very much. Would there be any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Mr. Hardy.
Good to go. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Equalization Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Ms. Manette?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Christian?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here. I'd ask for approval of the meeting minutes from September 22nd.
I'll make the motion. Morse.
I'll support. Christians?
Thank you, Ron. Motion by Morris, support by Christian, for approval of the meeting minutes from September 22nd. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Could we add a part on there, and I forgot to mention this during the Health and Human Services for department head report. I neglected to add those on there.
Do you want to do after the,
After my report?
okay. All right, noted. Any other changes to the agenda? I would ask for approval of the agenda, including the department head reports.
So moved. Walker. Support. Christians.
Moved by Walker, support by Christians. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Any public comment at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. David, Zencity 360 presentation.
Yeah, it's gonna be on there. Can I introduce it? Since
Absolutely.
It was
Mr. Morris.
inspired in myself. So this Zen City company was at the MAC conference, and they presented on a way for county boards to be able to communicate with their full constituency. And so this is a program that he's gonna, it's actually a gal, is actually gonna describe it. But so Tracy and I have met for a couple times now with this company. I will say I'm not advocating, like saying we should get this. I just want for us to have an option. I want you to know what the options are. Although I do think this is a nice program. It's something that could really help us out. I mean, meeting our goals from our strategic plan is communicating with people, being more transparent, making, building bridges, those sorts of things. And I believe that this program could possibly help. And you'll see here with her presentation, I think where I'm coming from with that. So that's the intro for this.
Thank you.
Okay, we are ready for you.
All right, I guess that's my cue to step in. So, hello everyone. Can't see you, but I can see I'm on a big screen right behind Tracy. So that's great. So it looks in great resolution. Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Still see some foreheads.
Maybe
that's
bend it
okay.
down a little bit. There we go.
Yeah,
There we go.
Awesome. So, really nice meeting you all. Just to introduce myself, so my name is Marab. I'm an account executive team lead at Zen City. Basically, my goal would be to share more about our work, about our mission, about the type of work we've been supporting our similar communities like the Oceana County. and see if that's something that can fit both sides. So basically start with the presentation. I know we want to make it concise when it comes to the time, but I also would love to leave some room for questions at the end. But obviously, feel free to make it interactive. If there's something that is unclear or there's still some comments or thoughts, feel free to interrupt, and I'd love to address anything. Phil, Tracy, any other alignments or questions or comments before we start?
Nope.
Can you hear us?
Nope.
Okay, I see Phil's nodding, like he's giving me a thumbs up, so I guess it's fine. So, I'll be sharing my screen quickly because I'm a visual learner. I'm guessing that would make sense for everyone here. But basically, our mission at Zen City is to really help local government leaders like yourself serve their community effectively by getting greater visibility into residents' priorities and needs, understand concerns in real time, and really make it very efficient for you in order to inform policy-making issues or any decisions that needs to be taken that can impact the level of trust and satisfaction when it comes to residents. To share, we're only working with local governments, so that's something that we're doing exclusively. We're only working with cities and counties out there. The fun fact I love to tell is I'm actually based in Tel Aviv in Israel, but the vast majority of our clients are actually based in the US. So we are privileged to partner up with over 300 local governments right now. So that's just in a nutshell to set the context for our conversation. But let me dive deeper, and I'm going to share my screen. So give me the thumbs up that you can see it. Thank you. So we're about to talk about the Zen City platform, about the ability for us to really include one platform with a range of tools to help empower your work when it comes to community engagement. So started by saying that we're already working with over 300 local governments across the country. Among them, we are serving communities of all sizes, so we work closely with Elle from Kent County, with Kalamazoo County, Midland County, Lenawee County, and many, many others. Actually, our smallest county would be somewhere around 10,000 residents, so that's just to share and give more context when it comes to the type of support and areas that we can potentially help with. So we're really here to speak about the fact that we know that local government keeps our world running, right? It's all about understanding and measuring the level of satisfaction when it comes to the residents, organize the community effectively, and really help build trust. And building trust with the community is really the key to success when it comes to understanding priorities, understanding needs, and really utilizing this in order to make more effective decisions that can impact the public in the way that we are aiming for. And something we keep hearing from all of our partners is how challenging this mission really is. So I'm about to focus into two specific challenges that we've identified based on the conversations we've had with all of our partners and communities like yourself. What we're seeing is that it's really hard for leaders to really go beyond what we call the SPPs. The same 10 people that tend to show up into public hearings, board meetings. I know that based on the conversation that my team had with Phil and Tracy, you refer them as the same 8 people, where you're probably familiar with their faces, familiar with the names, what we call the squeaky wheelers. It's really hard to take, to really understand if that feedback that you hear from the SCPs, maybe it's anecdotal, or maybe it's really hard to determine whether it expresses the voices of the majority. So we want to help you shift from this anecdotal feedback to something more reliable and comprehensive. Now, another challenge that we're running into is the fact that in many, many cases, it really requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of funds in order to really sometimes it's also a lot of manual work that needs to be done. It's really hard to get something that would work in an efficient way. And that's where Density comes to the table, with really the ability to make it easier, not just for you to hear from the residents, but also for the residents to share their thoughts, their comments, their feelings, and to make it very inclusive. So we want to help you hear from all corners of the community by making it extremely easy and seamless for all residents to participate and share their thoughts and comments. We realize that, if all the almost 30,000 residents of Oceana County don't show up into public hearings, it doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that they don't have any opinion to share. Maybe it means they're using different methods in order to express that, because they're working moms and dads that don't necessarily have the time to show up into a 5 p.m. meeting. Maybe the Hispanic community, around 40% from what I saw, something that is really there's some barriers that's holding them back. So that's what obviously we'll share more about how is it that we're doing that. But the goal is really to lower the barriers of participation. And by doing that, really make it very seamless and easy and digestible for you to understand priorities, understand and measure the level of satisfaction, and utilize this information in order to inform any decision that needs to be taken, but also in a timely manner. And something to acknowledge and discuss is the fact that this challenge and this complex problem we're discussing really, from what we're seeing, requires a multifaceted approach. So that's something I'm about to go deeper in a deeper level of granularity, and would love to know if there's any thoughts or comments following that. So we're really here to speak about one platform that includes a range of tools that can complement your work and empower that, and really to equip you with a greater visibility to help retrieve meaningful takeaways. So we'll start by, so these are different tools and layers that all of them are part of what we're offering in order to support Oceana County, and that's based on the conversation we've had with Tracy and Phil. So we're starting by really understanding perception, getting the baseline, understanding that and taking into account that if people are not showing up to council meetings, and if they're using different methods to express their thoughts and comments and feelings, we're seeing that a lot of the feedback is already available out there. So there's a lot of feedback that people are already sharing completely organically in a digital landscape. So really understanding and knowing what's going on, getting this baseline for all the things that would fall under your responsibility when it comes to the county. So getting this perception as a baseline, but also enable you to become more proactive by doing some quick and timely surveys to retrieve some questions and understand and getting some feedback in a more specific way to the things that you're doing and the type of projects and initiatives that currently on your plate, and also collaborate with the public by providing them a two-way communication platform to really help inform them on the one end on the things that you're doing to ensure that they are aware of what is it that you're doing, but also to measure the impact by encouraging them to share feedback and something more specific that can be utilized and incorporated to the decision-making processes. Now, from what I understood, one of the most pressing things we're currently discussing is around Crystal Valley Dam project. From what I've seen, obviously that's a good project for us to look at it, because with the organic layer, we can understand what's the perception, if people are even discussing it, if they're aware of it, what are their thoughts, what's the sentiment around this particular project. We can ask specific questions and really use some quick and timely surveys in order to understand more their opinions around that. And we can also use the collaborative input and encourage them to engage with you, to really set the context for the conversation, share with them the timeline for the project, and really invite them to share their thoughts around that. So I'd love to really, I'd love to pause for a sec I would love to add more context and really walk you through the platform and really show you some layers of all the things that we discussed proudly, but would love to pause and see if there are any questions so far or things that we're addressing at this stage.
Anybody?
Don't be shy.
Will we be moving forward into the how to communicate with those action groups?
So you want to, so you're basically giving me intent to go into the platform to show you
Yes.
the part.
You read my
Okay.
mind. Very good.
There you go. Great, so bear with me for just a second.
Yeah, how does it work?
Yes. Okay, so that's a demo account just to help visualize things and really make it more concrete when it comes to what you can potentially anticipate when it comes to Oceana County. So our team would work in order to put together a platform that would be completely tailored to your county. So that's just the home screen, and the goal is to enable you to have like a quick snapshot for the variety of tools that all of them are relevant when it comes to the residents' feedback and sentiment. And the goal would be to dive deeper into each and every one that eventually would provide this comprehensive view and holistic view to ensure that you would not be missing anything. So let me start by exploring the organic layer, what we call the ability to understand, perception, and really help you control the narrative, given that all of it is being aggregated in real time. So the goal is really to capture all residents' feedback that is publicly available out there, to translate it into something that is actionable. So that's the general dashboard. So you can see I can quickly walk you through it, that we're looking, for instance, just for the past 30 days, to have the ability to really measure the entire interactions and performance over time, to identify any spikes in conversations, any anomalies, really have the ability to have a pulse on the resident sentiment. Now, we also help you measure the sentiment, as we said, and the goal is to really understand the resident's level of satisfaction. So everything in green would reflect a positive sentiment, everything in red would reflect a negative one. Obviously, we'd like to work closely to see much more of the green also in an ongoing basis and to really help you measure the impact of the things that you're doing. Now, since we're only working with local governments, the most popular topics here, all of them would fall under Oceana County responsibilities. So all of them are also sorted by the amount of interactions to also help you understand what is pressing for the residents, what is currently popular, what people are discussing the most, and what's actually worth your attention to make things more efficient. Now, for instance, if we identify public safety as one of the things, I can go and look into it and get a more granular view with the stat categories, and if I scroll down, I can actually see what's causing these spikes in conversation. So, in no time, I was able to identify what was one of the most discussed topics, and I was able to understand what is actually causing these spikes in conversation and identify the source. And that's what enables you to stay one step ahead of everything, but also control the narrative of the conversation, given that it is something that is updated in real time to ensure that you would not be missing anything. I'll go back, you could also see that the logic behind this is to also apply to what we call the official data sources, and official would be, for instance, the official Facebook page of the county. Most importantly, it would apply to the unofficial data channels, and that would be local media news and media outlets. It could be any neighborhood groups or events or cooking moms and dads and students, and anything that would actually arise from the locals themselves. And we're here to uncover, and we're seeing that across the board with all departments that we work with, around 80% of the feedback is coming through the unofficial data channels. That's just to demonstrate the importance of uncovering those channels. Now, Another thing, what we've seen so far is just from a monitoring standpoint. But as we said, we also want to help you become more proactive. So that's why we've created projects. Now, a project is, for instance, could be for the Crystal Valley Dam project, really to capture the conversation in one place. And we can see, and have a template for that gives ideas for a variety of potential projects and the things we've done with similar communities, for instance. It could be the Asparagus Festival, the annual one potentially, or any other event that the county is operating. It could be for roads, to understand and gather the conversation around this in one place. It could be around the budget. It really, I mean, it's really unlimited, and the goal is really to utilize more and more. And not only that, it's something that can help by providing the organic perception. It also something that can be used in order to inform the public about a variety of things, and that's something that would fall under the engagement layer and the tool. So it's one thing to know what people are discussing organically, but we also want to help you inform them about particular issues and set the context for it, but also encourage them to share feedback and thoughts and really use this input in order to have better decisions. So this is like a demo of the way that this would look like from the resident standpoint. This is something that would be visual for them. So if I was Oceana County resident, I would be seeing this list of projects and something that, you know, can be shared seamlessly through newsletters, through the website, through any other digital channels that you may have, or even in person. And for instance, I'll go to participate during budgeting. So you would have the option to really use some videos or use the time frame. That's something I know that Alon was discussing mostly around the Crystal Valley Dam. But set the time frame for it and use videos. You can use the headers and the language to set the context for the conversation, but also to encourage the residents to participate, and that's just one example of the options for them to take and be part of this entire process and project, and to actually increase the level of transparency. Because by making it very seamless and easy for the residents to participate, it also gives them the message, the county actually cares, like the government cares. They want to hear from me, they care for my voice, they're making it very, very easy and seamless for me to participate. I don't need to attend physically a 5 p.m. meeting. I can just go to my mobile, insert some feedback, and that's something that will be sorted out. So that's another element and another outcome to expect just by really launching it to the public. And that's something we're also working closely with a lot of our partners about the ability to communicate this out there and really encouraging them and letting them know how much you care about this project and about the ability to share their thoughts. Now, another layer I would like us to focus on, I know I'm being conscious of the time, is the fact that, and you know, obviously that's something that would include surveys and other capabilities, and all of it is in a nutshell. But something that it's important to emphasize is that all of our partners are also working closely with the consultants on our behalf, usually the one that is working with our counties in Michigan, for instance, our partners in Michigan. And that's just to share best practices and from our knowledge and to make things more effective. But they're also working closely with the data analysts, because we're not just collecting the information from you, we would also be analyzing it. So something that is shown here is the Insights feed. That's something we're providing to all of our partners. Now, an insight is something that we encourage you to use this as a resource. Like, tell us about something like a project or an initiative or an event, something that you would like to learn more about, and get something more in-depth, and then you can say, I need it by next week before our board meeting or before our management meeting. And then our team would investigate and would put together for you something timely to ensure that you would not be missing anything. So that's an example, for instance, of Aquafest, Conversation Peak during the festival. This content mainly stems before the festival, as residents didn't know what attractions the festival would offer without carnival rides. Now, the goal is really to provide a bottom line of things. If it's one thing to know if people are feeling good or bad about a particular thing, it's a completely different story to understand why people feel the way they feel. And that's the goal of this type of insights reports and executive reports, to uncover this why element and equip you with the main takeaway that can incorporate into the decision-making process and be taken into account when discussing these primary things in the agenda of any management committee. So, I know we literally hit the 20 minutes, so I'd love to, I hope that makes sense. Obviously, there's plenty other stuff to explore, but our team is here to work on this together and really to provide this extra arm in order to digest a lot of the things and keep you with the bottom line, and really ensuring that, once again, you won't be missing anything and help you stay one step ahead and control the narrative and really get something more comprehensive. So I spoke a lot. I hope this things make sense, but does this resonate so far?
Phil?
Oh, yeah, well, you're the chair, so.
Oh, no, go ahead.
There's a lot of red flags in this for me. Number one, the first one would be Zen and Christian as words have a lot of similarities. And to me, if we couldn't, well, you see where I'm coming from. Zen is, to me it sounds kind of like a bunch of hippies sitting around a boardroom trying to figure out what we want to name it. And somebody says, hey, Zen City. Oh, yeah, I like that. That is minor, I admit, but just for the record, Christian City would be blackballed if it were the name of that in the climate in which we are in today. Likely. Okay. Number two, on her, it's not, I could not find it in here, but it was climate agenda plan. Well, there is no climate crisis. And if you were to go and listen to the actual scientists instead of what you hear on the news and the misinformation that they are pushing in the news, you would know that. One cannot change the atmosphere, which is way less than 5% of gases, and of non-water vapor gases. There is no possible way that what they propose can alter the atmosphere and can do any good, in my opinion. And there were 60 million buffalo on this continent 150 years ago, and there was no worry about methane gas then. People have to quit buying what is being pushed by people on TV who have not thought about anything, and they're only parroting what their masters, only parroting one line, and do not and cancel everybody in opposition. And number 3, when it comes to, in the first place, addressing dis and misinformation, they need an editor for that line, a grammatical editor, but misinformation is abounding in this country. But we are being told that the truth is misinformation. And I can give you a recent example. In the EU, just recently, Pfizer's president of International Developed Markets, Janine Small, admitted that the COVID vaccine had never been tested on its ability to prevent transmission, contrary to what was previously advertised. That was deliberate misinformation pushed on the populace of the world to make people fearful to get the vaccine, and beyond that they were pushing, well, you got to shut down, you can't have schools, you got to shut your business down, you got to do this, do that, and everything else. This is plus, if it had been, well, okay, I question the motives of any government entity which refused to promote any health directives for early treatment of COVID, and shot everything down and did not allow any doctor that they had control over to use protocols for viruses that were common and readily available, and that we have been using for couple hundred years.
Hey Martha, I don't disagree with you on probably all that
So
stuff.
I am,
Well, I'm just,
I know.
Zen City would be about what, from my understanding, it would be about what people are talking about here.
Number 4, what I am not in, I question the word the words, I don't remember the exact words, but inserting themselves into conversations in the county. I'm not in favor of that in any way, shape, or form, online or offline. I understand that the Right Place and other companies that we deal with do talk to our residents, but I don't want a company going unasked, inserting themselves into an online or offline conversation, unasked by the people who are having that conversation. That's my thought.
Mr. Walker.
Mr. Morris, you've been very active in the broadband and looking at broadband with us in Oceana County, and you're very involved with that. I would think that these surveys and most of this information would be gathered on the internet and gathered on broadband. How do we look at the information that is generated and the information, the data that's brought in, and determine whether we're representing the rural area of Oceana County that has limited broadband, or are we just representing the larger populated areas, the Hearth, the Pentwaters, the villages and everything, and not getting the input from the people that don't have the internet at this time to do that? Because we're successful as a county because we have such a mix of people.
Right.
And I think, if we can't gather that information from all of them, or if there's not a stopgap, some cautions on gathering information to make sure that everybody is being represented.
So I think that's a good question for our I forget her name, but I think that's a good question for. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
How do you make sure that, I think what Mr. Walker is saying is, how do you make sure that you're getting the wide variety, including rural people that maybe don't have the highest quality of internet, having their say as well. their voice being heard?
So it's a valid concern, and I completely understand it, Mr. Walker, what you're describing. To share, we actually done a lot of work around broadband projects with tons of rural counties like yourself, in Virginia, in Michigan, in Ohio. So that's something that we're very much familiar with, and I think we shared a recent resource we've put together around it, like a case study where we've helped our counties to use surveys in order to retrieve this information. Obviously, what we're focusing on would be on the digital landscape. Now, we also take into account the fact that you're still running those in-person meetings, but we want to help leverage that and also utilize these surveys in order to ensure that we'll hear as much as we can and from all corners of the community, like you said. Now, I won't be cheeky and say, hey, we'll be hearing from all the 27,000 residents of Oceana County. But the question is whether or not we can help you increase and go beyond what you're currently hearing from. And based on our work with over 300 local governments, I can tell you that the answer is yes. So there's a valid concern, but we're still here in order to ensure that you would be hearing from a lot of voices that's currently not tapping into your county, and also to leverage the ongoing systems that you already have in place and ensure we can potentially increase those and incorporate this into one platform that will speak the same language. So I'm happy to also share some of our work also specifically around broadband, to make you feel comfortable around it, and maybe some content pieces we've done around the success we've seen with other communities. Yeah, I hope it helps in a sense when it comes to providing more context to your concern.
Thank you.
And I'd also love to address maybe some of the comments that were raised before, and while I understand the concerns, I wanted to maybe share something around Zen City. The name is actually a reverse of citizen. That's the origin of the name itself. And once again, we do work with a lot of communities in Michigan by now, so this can provide maybe some bit more familiarity that other county leaders like yourself are utilizing Zen City successfully for more than 2-3 years by now. So obviously can share more references around that to make you feel more comfortable, that you're not just testing the water and that other folks have done it in the past successfully. When it comes to misinformation, that's actually one of our primary use cases. Our goal is to, and what we're doing with other partners, to really help tackle that. By getting this real-time alerts and understanding what's going on out there, and we're acknowledging that there's a lot of misinformation but also disinformation. And in many cases we were, like our leaders were able to identify something that was spiking. For instance, we've been working with Jasper County in Iowa. They're kind of similar to your guys, and about a year ago, they had their sheriff department found a body of a black man called Michael Williams, and it was brutally murdered, something that was also very intense when it comes to BLM movement, obviously. And by the time that the sheriff was doing the investigation to understand the trigger of the murder itself, there was a lot of misinformation and rumors around the fact that it's related to the fact that it's completely racial motivated one. And something that was actually something that our team has identified. We saw a spike in conversation. We saw that a lot of movement actually about to go to the rural county in order to protest, to have demonstration around that, just because of the what they allegedly thought. And the fact was that after the investigation, they realized that it had nothing to do with any racial or something that's related to his color. And they actually were able to go really quickly to do a press release with sharing with everyone what actually was the case around that, the fact that it was not racially motivated, had nothing to do with its color, and they were able to measure, following that, the impact, and they saw a significant decrease in spike, and the fact that people were starting to tell the truth and to share it, and the fact that it's not that the rumors were false, and that helped them really tackle this misinformation, organize the community, and really share what's actually going out there, what's the truth, and measure the impact of their activity around it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just for the sake of time, just to keep moving on. Yeah, I appreciate
Sure.
that anecdotal. I gotta say, I know for something clicked with me with your presentation, of which I appreciate very much. The monitoring element, I am not comfortable with. I think there's value. I don't like the monitoring element, that it's monitoring people in the county. I'd like the element of, if we have an issue, we have a department, we have, you know, something that we want to push out to people for them to see, you know, or get a survey done, that sort of thing. That's what I like. I'm not comfortable with the monitoring element. So we're gonna, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to go that way. The other piece is what I'm talking about. So for whatever that's worth, I don't know if anybody else shares that concern too, but there's a way to not use that platform with you guys, right? That we can just use. I don't know what you call the pushing out.
We can. So I think that was, once again, was based on the previous conversation I know that the team has had with you and Tracy. We call the tool organic. We can focus solely on the engage, obviously, and the two-way communication platform. Just to share from the monitoring standpoint, and that's something that's really important to emphasize, the fact that all the data is publicly available. We never collect something that, you know, something that damage the privacy element. We're completely compliant when it comes to it, and all the data is completely anonymized. So the goal is just to understand the level of aggregation and understand the sentiment, and not to expose or uncover specific folks. So really, when it comes to privacy, we're completely compliant. So if that was the main concern around the monitoring element, so that's just to share that that's not the intention. It's all about like really understanding the sentiment. But once again, the goal is really to follow your lead, and we can definitely focus solely on the engage element.
I mean, I would presume you get some of the monitoring element. You get information from Facebook, people's Facebook pages that are here, or Instagram accounts,
Not
Twitter.
At all. No, that's not the purpose. The goal is really to go once again to publicly available data channels. So we're looking into pages, groups, and anything that is already available. And the goal is really to give room and space and for the people that speak up, that want you to hear it from them, and just to take this all into to digest it for you, and analyze to make it actionable. But yeah, just wanted to ensure that that's not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I guess the bottom line is we haven't heard what's the cost to the county.
It's a $20,000.
Is it an a la carte then, as?
Yeah, would the price be reduced if we did just the Engage platform, I presume?
If we'll do just the Engage, we can look at lowering down the price, definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
Then the $20,000 is the discounted price for all the things that were shown, and that the list price for that is $36,000. But something we've discussed with Phil and Tracy is to give a discounted pricing of $20,000. Given that you would like to proceed just with Engage, you can expect another reduce in the price.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sure. Thank you for the kind questions. I appreciate it. Any other thoughts or things that I can help with at this stage?
No, we're going to move on, but appreciate it very much.
Sure. So, Phil, Tracy, I'll make sure to follow up following that, and have a good one. Take care,
Thank you.
and we'll hope to speak with you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Administrator Biard. Consideration of a proposed motion for the appropriation of ARPA funds as recommended by the ARPA Committee for the purpose of a chiller for the courthouse, epoxy flooring for the animal control building, central training facility for all public safety entities, personal protective equipment for Pentwater, Shelby, Benona, and Hart Fire Departments, and an antenna for radio reception for the Shelby, Benona Fire Department, number 2022-12.
So the ARPA committee reviewed these proposals. The chiller is in the amount of $164,365, and Brian is out looking for additional bids on that. So we're not set on the $164,365. If it comes in lower, then we would go with, of course, with the lower rate. The epoxy flooring, this request came from an inspection of the animal control floor in their kennel area, and due to that inspection, they're requiring that we have this epoxy flooring fixed, and that's what that request was for. The fire department requests were for personal protection equipment, and the ARPA committee was approving $25,000 for each of those fire departments, as well as a request from Shelby Benona. They asked for the personal protection equipment along with an antenna radio. So the Pentwater, Shelby Benona, and Hart would each receive $25,000. And then for the central training facility, that would be $40,000.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple comments. When I saw the bids for the chillers, I had talked to our administrator, and we do have a 3-bid process for anything that costs that much money. And our maintenance people, the people who have the contract for the maintenance for all of the HVAC in the county now, elected not to bid on it.
Correct.
So, you know, it was just something that they had installed the furnaces with this system, but they elected not to bid on it. So I asked our administrator, who went to Brian, and I gave her the name of 2 commercial contractors out of Muskegon who do hospitals and schools and everything, Lasco and Pressures and Pipes. You know, the big people, they do everything and this, that. And one of the reasons that I thought we needed to look at that, and I asked that we look at it now, is we should have 3 detailed bids so we know what type of material they're putting in there, to make sure that one doesn't miss something, the low bid doesn't miss something that's very important that goes in there. I know they're all good at what they do, so that's why that came up. And the only other question that I have for the committee, in the ARPA committee, is when we fund, which I would anticipate we would do, these requests from the fire departments, if we have the other fire departments in the county that come in and request equal funding for protective gear, are we prepared to do that?
Well, it's up to the committee to make the recommendations, and I'm only one, but that is a possibility. That was one of the things that we were trying to accomplish in funding the requests that we had.
And the only reason I do that is for equity among all of the fire departments. Right. If we're funding for one, you know, the other, and if you don't mind, Tracy.
Oh, go ahead.
We had a discussion this morning that this will probably be set up when the items are invoiced. We will write the claim to pay that.
Right.
You know, but there will have to be an invoice from the departments. You know, and I'm not saying that anybody's not going to buy, but we should have, it's good business practices for us to have an invoice before we actually write the checks.
Right.
So we're not just passing the money along onto those townships or villages or wherever that money is going. That way it's going strictly for what the.
Yeah. What the
ARPA
request
committee
was for,
approved.
correct.
Yes.
And lastly, Mr. Hurd, I want to thank you and the ARPA committee
Mhm.
for taking the diligent time and looking at these.
And we still have more to go through.
Well, and, you know, the pie is getting smaller all the time.
Yes, it is. Yes, yes,
But-
it is. And that was one of the concerns as well, too. And I just want to point out, some of the requests for higher amounts than that, but
And that's my concern when I mentioned that we possibly could have other fire departments come in and request things, you know,
Right.
So.
absolutely.
And I have to say, it's very refreshing for me, having been on the board for a number of years, when I have questions like this for the administrator's office, that I can just ask.
Good.
And then find out what's going on with them.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I bet you didn't know what you were getting into when you volunteered to do this, did you? No,
Again, I'm only one of
right.
several on the committee.
No, I
so.
appreciate it too. I know you've heard a lot of voices. Were there other fire departments that applied?
No.
As well? So I guess I'm comfortable with it because of that. If if we funded some but not others, that's where I would get uncomfortable with the equity piece, but that, everybody had the same deadline.
If they knew that other people were applying, maybe I'm off base with that. Maybe
Sure,
I'm off base.
it's a good point. And then secondly, I wonder if we could have a breakdown of like categorically where it's being spent, like county, like what percentage is going to county expenses, like capital expenses, what percentage is going to fire departments, what percentage is going to investment type things, what percentage is going, I think I would like to see that, and so that we know how to spend the other $1,000,001 or whatever it is
I
that's
think it's
left
lower
over.
than that now, but we do have a running Excel sheet on that.
Yeah,
that
I
indicates
saw that.
The administrator has, if you.
Yeah, I mean, and even start and I can do that too. I think break it down into percentages.
No, but it's broken down by where it went department and what it was,
Yeah.
what the expenditure was for.
Right.
But that is that is an ongoing running total that we review when we have our ARPA meetings.
Sure.
So, and it is available.
Yeah, we had it at the board meeting, or the budget meeting.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
I guess, when it comes to further requests, I think one thing we have to remember is the United States is the land of equal opportunity. So this process has been going on for quite some time to apply for these funds, and so while as people in this country we have equal opportunity, initiative and drive go a long ways for performance and acceleration. So all that to say, if there's other fire departments that haven't applied, the window for application, granted it's our own deadline, but that window is closed, and it's been open for quite some time. So and I think through the Officers Association and whatnot, I'm sure these opportunities have been presented to many departments. Probably, Jack, is it fair to say all the departments in the county know about this opportunity? Do you know, or I don't want to put you on the spot, but I
It was
assume.
mentioned at least once at all the county fire officers meetings.
So,
to be honest with you, I didn't know about it till Chief Fearing told me about it, because I wasn't obviously paying attention when they did.
Sure.
So I think they all had the opportunity. Could all of them use some money?
I'm sure they
Oh,
could.
sure. That's Mr. Schiller. Schiller's Department of Revenue.
No.
So, I mean, there's a deadline. I think I filed 2 requests. I mean, I filed the initial one for some protective equipment, and then my board said, why don't you apply for the antenna? And that's why there's 2 requests in for us. I mean, it's rather embarrassing when the chief's in his office and we get 2 calls in a week and I don't even know it, because our radios don't work in the station and neither do our phones.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing when you walk out the door and find the truck gone.
Them tin boxes we build and keep Faraday,
So
the Faraday cage works
So,
well.
I mean, I think
But-
we all had the opportunity.
Yep.
I know it was discussed to some degree, because the request from the county for $40,000 for the training facility, Every fire department has a rep on that county committee. And it was discussed numerous times of what we were looking for and what we were trying to accomplish. So I think if any department failed to respond, it was either because they didn't want to take the time and put the effort in.
So those are kind of, Jack summed up my thoughts well. I don't want to slight any department. I think the committee has done due diligence to look at all these, and as you know, as a board, as we approve these, I think fairness is key, but I think we've done due diligence to make the opportunity known and approve as they come.
Mr. Hardy, Mr. Beggs and Chief White have satisfied my concern about that.
Okay.
With their comments. Thank you, gentlemen.
One thought that I have as far as the chillers, is it appropriate to wait to approve that until we have bids, or are we approving dollar amounts and bids can be approved later? I guess I'm just asking the question what the most appropriate way to go about handling that is.
That's up to the board to determine, but I did put it, when I put it in the motion, I put it for up to that dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do get something cheaper, then and it satisfies the equipment.
Yeah, I guess, why don't we pull that one for right now? The money's not gonna go away within the next 2 weeks, is it, Mr. Hardy?
No.
Let's revisit that particular one at our next meeting when we have more. And I will openly tell you this. I have a good friend who has retired as an estimator for our commercial boiler makers. And if we get bids from 3 different companies, I can take the name off of all of those bids and I can send it to him. It's what he did for 25 years, and he can look at them as a bid, you know, an estimator for the boiler makers who normally do this, and he can look at it and say, this is the difference between those bids. If the board would like me to do that, I can get you know that information.
I think it's appropriate for us to table the discussion. We have the recommendation from the committee, and we're just looking for a little further information. We can unofficially ear tag that money as, you know, I don't want to say it's spent yet because it requires approval, but we have the recommendation from the committee, and I think it's appropriate for us to wait to vote on that until we have the proper bid procedure in place.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be basically for the ARPA committee set in reserve for now until the final bids come in.
And I talked to Brian this morning, and he said that things must be slowing down for some of these people. He called them this week, and they're both going to be here this week to look at it.
Oh.
And I guess I will say the rest of the requests for the flooring, the training center, the bunker gear for the fire departments are all intended as great use of this money to help those departments when a fire engine is a minimum of $500,000 plus, their budgets don't go very far. So I think it's a good use of that money.
Yes, Mr.
I just want to encourage, I also agree with what Tim was just saying. Chief White is in the audience today, and when we say PPE, I want everybody in the room to realize that we're talking helmets, we're talking face shields, we're talking coats that are NOMEX, NFPA type rated and approved. Not only the coat, but the pants and the boots. You've gone to leather boots pretty much. Many departments have gone that route, and it's all very expensive equipment. And when you look at individual townships and what they can provide for budget, this is a big help for them. The other question, Jack, is with the antenna, are you doing something to get that antenna up in the air? Are you going on a tower of some sort?
From what they've told me, that all we need is an external antenna and then use the building as a loop, so that the pages will work in the building.
Okay.
And still not going to do anything for our cell phones, but at least we'll be able to at least I won't be sitting in the office wondering why the truck went out the door.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Ms. Biard, consideration of a motion to set the public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget and property tax millage rate to be leveled 2022-13.
So this is our annual public hearing for the proposed budget and property tax millage rate. And I'm just asking for you to approve that.
Okay. Moving on again, the administrator's review of selected claims for payment and administrator's report.
Okay, the claims report has been provided to you. Are there any questions on those? Okay.
Okay.
Would you like me to move on to administrator's report?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so I noted this in my report, but Stacy and I have been working on the health insurance piece for the county employees, and we have 3 companies that we've been working with, and they seem to be stepping up to the plate with the challenge. So we're working on that, getting the rest of those pieces gathered together so that we can take a look at that, and we will have something to present to you next week, or next board meeting. So of course getting with the unions first, and then we will present that to the board. I had a meeting yesterday with American Classic with regards to the transfer station, and we're working on some solutions as it in regards to some of the stockpile that's out there relating to the boats and the campers and different things, and I will probably be coming to the board with some sort of a presentation as it relates to the transfer station in the near future. And one last thing, 2 things I have. Brian did get a quote on on a solution for the flooding for the basement. So he's working on a couple other pieces as it relates to that, but we'll be getting that to you as well. Excited to see that and hoping that this is going to take care of the issue. So, and the price was, wow. I was shocked. So.
Shocked in a good way or a bad way?
A good way. A good way.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He has a 2-part system, 2-part cures that he wants to look at for the time being, but he's waiting for one more piece of information before he actually gets it to the administrator for us.
Very exciting.
Good.
So, one other piece of exciting news. Yesterday I received an email from NACO that said your county is eligible to receive a federal payment. So I looked into this, and it's for counties with federal land and those who receive revenue sharing. And I looked it up, and Oceana is eligible for $105,271 for this year. So I'm working on getting that submitted so that we can get that money back as soon as possible. But because I worked for another county, and Bob had submitted on that same portal before, because it goes through the ARPA portal. We have to go through some hoops to get me on there, but we'll get that submitted, and then just on top of that, we will be receiving another $105,271 after the first of the year. So 2 payments in that amount, and that should help us out.
Tracy sent me this yesterday and asked, about going forward with it. Yeah, but if you get the chance, Tracy, send that link out to the board members.
Sure.
Take a look at it. This goes along with the payment in lieu of taxes. It's based on the property, like if you have a lot of federal force and everything, you get nothing. This is one of the very few things that I have ever seen where the southeast corner of Michigan isn't getting any money, or very little money.
Yeah.
But some other areas, I'll give you the example, I looked up Gogebic County, it's $990,000. And in Ontonagon County, where I'm from, it's $790,000, because all of the federal land that there are up there, and the school districts have a real hard time in some of those areas because of it. But in the rural areas with federal land, this is it's coming from the roundabout way through the Forest Service.
Yeah.
Is where this is all coming.
Wow, that's good news.
Yes, it is.
Tracy, you wanna do department head reports?
No, I just wanted that on there in case you had any department
Oh.
heads that wanted to provide you a report.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Department heads? All right, hearing none. Any public comment at this time? Hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting of the Finance and Equalization Committee, and we'll take a short break for the regular board meeting. Rush for the bathroom.
Double your fun, 105.
You like that?
Right.
Yeah.
I'll take a break while the rest of you do your dumb.
That was very exciting.
Finally.
My wife was here.
Good morning, Martha.
How you doing?
I'm doing. Yeah.